This episode showcases Scott with his sister and his niece few years back in the park. Scott happened to be having fun with his sis, showcasing the little power he got. They left the park and went up the building, leaving Scott downstairs when disaster occurred. It was during the time Omni-Man was trying to instill the Viltrumites' education to his son by demonstrating how human lives were worthless as he crashed the building in Chicago, claiming a lot of lives. Scott's family were not spared as he lost his sis and niece that day. Scott brought forward his petition to an attorney who happened to be his friend as he demands Invincible should be tried and persecuted by law for crime against humanity, but she refused to look at it because she knew it was above her and made it clear to Scott that laws doesn't really apply to them as she drove off. Scott happened to work at a lab as he observes Donald, Cecil's assistant, occasional visit. He was having meal with other workers where they discussed how they were fans of Invincible, but Scott had a huge disdain for him, and he stated that they should be persecuted. Meanwhile, a villain happened to be terrorizing the city as he wanted to make them all a vegetarian. Oliver, Mark and Eve arrived at the moment, and Oliver was left to handle him as part of his training session. At dusk, Oliver discusses about his father with Mark, asking whether the people were ever going to forgive him for what he did, stating that his dad has saved more life than he took, and they should cancel each other out, but Mark made it clear to him that things doesn't work that way. Scott was at home with his wife as he had been plotting his revenge against Invincible for a long time, and it seems the time had finally come for him to carry out his plans. He had now become Powerplex. His wife inserted some electrode disc he stole from the lab on his body and hit him multiple times with a hammer, making him more powerful with every pressure mounted on him. He exerted more pressure on himself by jumping off a rooftop to the ground, and it seemed to have an effect on him, making him more powerful. Mark and Eve attended William's birthday party and let him win the bowling competition as it was his day. Amber also attended the party with her boyfriend, making Mark nervous because they used to date, but he handled it well. Everything seems to be going smoothly when Mark's attention was brought to a supervillain, Powerplex, who seemed to be causing havoc in the city, but Mark switches off the TV as he wasn't interested. Meanwhile, the police arrived to arrest Powerplex, who stated that he doesn't want to hurt anyone and demands that he only wants Invincible to pay for his crimes against humanity. Shapesmith arrived at that moment, representing the Guardians of the Globe, as he orders Powerplex to stand down. Powerplex refused to fight him as he only wants Invincible, but Shapesmith punched him severely, trying to take him out, but the force made him more powerful as he released a gush of energy, hurting Shapesmith in the process. Powerplex felt bad for hurting Shapesmith and flees the scene and went home to his wife. He felt sad because he might never get justice for his sis and niece. He felt his family is no longer safe as Cecil will soon find out he stole the discs. His wife comforted him and reminded him that the memorial is in a few days and Invincible will definitely show up. So he set out plans for that. It was Memorial Day as Mark and his family began dressing up to attend the event. They were ready as Mark flew the car to the venue. Back at the lair, Rudd and Rex set to work as they began working on a device for Monster Girl. The work was complete and Monster Girl was invited to test it. It turns out the device Rudd created was meant to correct the error in Monster Girl, so whenever she turns back to her human form, the device prevents her from aging backwards. Monster Girl tested the device and she felt significant changes as no reverse aging was detected. She hugged Rude and thanks him for fixing her. Ray watched from afar and met with Rex as she informed him that she wants to quit. At the memorial, the people were giving a speech when Powerplex arrived as he mentioned the people killed by Omni-Man and his son and demands justice for them. Eve asks Mark to sit this one out as she decides to take care of it. Eve engaged in a huge confrontation with Powerplex, but anytime she hits him, he just seems to get more powerful. Eve realized this and switched to defense mode and allows him to exert all his energy until there was none left, then she restrains him as the Guardians of the Globe arrives to arrest him. Powerplex was been transported to a secure location. During the transport, the vehicle hit a brick and tilted a little and Powerplex had a spark of energy. This gave him an idea as he slams his body continuously until he had reached a threshold. Then he was able to take out the guards and break out of his vehicle and flew off. Mark felt pretty bad for what happened at the memorial and blames himself as Eve tried comforting him. Meanwhile, Rex and Ray had a huge argument as Ray wanted to quit and leave with Rex so they could have a new life together, but Rex wasn't thrilled with the idea because being a superhero was all he had ever known. They couldn't reach an agreement, so they decided to do what's best for themselves as Ray was quitting while Rex was staying, so they kissed each other goodbye. Meanwhile, Scott was lamenting on how he failed again and also how the GDA is on to them. His wife told him it wasn't over and proposed an idea. Meanwhile, Mark met with Donald, who told him all about Powerplex and how he lost his sis and niece in the Chicago incident years back. Mark wanted to speak to him, but it was already too late as Powerplex held his wife and child hostage according to plans, so Invincible will come to them. The plan works as Invincible arrived, stating to know Jessica and Gretchen, Scott's sis and nephew, and was really sorry for what happened. Powerplex wasn't interested in attacks, but Mark refused to attack him because he knows how his powers work and tried talking with him. It wasn't working, so Mark had no choice and punches Powerplex, sending him flying. He quickly went to save the hostages, but Scott's wife spat on him, calling him a monster. Powerplex was enraged as he released a unanimous amount of energy as he attempted to fry Invincible's brain. Mark was taking out, but to what end as Powerplex realizes he ended up frying his family by accident as he sobbed over their corpses. Mark survived the attack and was able to capture Powerplex. Scott was restrained in a secure facility as Donald informed Mark that the disc can't be removed without killing Scott. Mark tried speaking to Scott as he tried comforting him for what happened, but Scott made it clear to him that if he ever escapes, he was coming for him. Mark sat at the rooftop with Eve as he discussed what happened, and Eve comforted him. Someone happened to be watching. Well, it was Engstrom Levy as he had duplicates of Mark and others, and was ready to exert his revenge. Stay tuned for more episodes of Invincibles on its mythical, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more mind-blowing recaps like this. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.